Okay, I think this is going to be part 9, I guess. Okay, cleaning up the orphanage. After eating lunch, we immediately went to work cleaning the orphanage, but the cleaning had to be done by the people who lived there. The temple had an excess of orphan grey priests, and although they had been doing laundry in the morning and then cleaning in the afternoon, up until the past few years, in recent times they consistently ran out of work to do by noon. Thus, we decided to start the cleanup in the afternoon when there would be a lot of idle priests. On the surface, we'll be framing the cleanup as a way to avoid shaming me, the orphanage director, and blue-robed shrine maiden with the filthy place of work. Apparently, having a reason like that would make the people of the orphanage more willing to get out of their way and do work they usually didn't do. My goal with cleaning the orphanage was actually twofold. Getting it clean was the obvious part of it, but I also wanted them to learn that they would get paid if they worked hard. To that end, I had a chef making soup to reward those who helped clean, and I was planning on presenting buttered potatofuls to the 30 priests who worked the hardest. The priests split into multiple groups before beginning work. Those who would wash the children when it was warm outside, those who would clean the floor where the pre-baptism children were, those who would clean the rest of the girls' building, those who would help transport the workshop tools, and those who would clean the boys' building and other miscellaneous areas. Fran and Gil had been really surprised when Benno and I suggested it. In general, the work of temple servants involved washing clothes, cleaning, and praying. Everyone did laundry together in the morning, everyone prayed together, and so on. Everything was always done together, and they were never split into groups. I explained that splitting into groups would speed up the process of cleaning such a large area, and that a group of stronger adults was important for carrying in the tools and such. Will they listen to me and do their work if I tell them to split into groups? It'll be fine. Everyone still considers Fran to be one of the high priest's attendants. To the great priests and apprentices in the orphanage, Fran being trusted by the high priest made him their superior. Gil explained that if he took the lead, the orphans would do their work even if they weren't too happy about it. Though there are some number of children who will likely disobey, said Fran, while glancing at Gil. Although Gil now took his work seriously, in the past he was apparently quite the problem child and really wore down the caretaker priests. He avoided eye contact with Fran, which made me giggle. Fran and Gil patrolled the orphanage, making sure everyone was doing their job and checking to see who was working hard while reporting the details and the overall progress of the cleanup to me. Les was in the boys' building, monitoring the cleaning and getting the tools from the mine workshop where they needed to be. He would then make buttered potatofuls there once everything was done. Dealey was cleaning my chambers while keeping an eye on the chefs. I believe I shall patrol as well. You're staying here, mine. Don't want you collapsing out there somewhere. Let's stop before I could even finish my sentence and gave me an exasperated look as I fell silent with a frown. You know, sister mine, we're cleaning the orphanage so the apprentice blue shrine maiden who's becoming the orphanage director can go inside. What do you think will happen if you go there before the cleaning's done? Oh, right, I didn't think about that. I sighed since without Fran, I couldn't even go to the book room. Seeing that, Fran gave a smile filled with compassion and set a piece of parchment in front of me. It was filled from top to bottom with methodical handwriting that reflected Fran's personality well. There is much for you to learn, sister mine. You must first memorize this entire greeting, which you will need to recite this evening when you go to the orphanage in an official capacity. For the first time, take particular care not to mistake the names of the gods. He had written it on a paper so I could cheat by looking at it if necessary, but in general I would need to memorize these kinds of things. I sighed as I looked at the parchment, seeing that Fran continued to smile and presented board after board to me. If you have the time, here is a list of the teas and varieties of milk we have at the temple. Here is your preferred kind, here is Master Benno's, here is Litz's, and here is the high priest. You will do well to memorize the preferences of your guests. I doubted the high priest would ever come to my chambers, but I didn't say that. I could at least understand the principle of understanding the tastes of your boss. Let's, barely holding back a fit of laughter at the stack of boards in front of me, gave me a thumbs up, a gesture that might just be universal across all worlds. Yeah, good for you, mine. You've got a lot of stuff to read now. I like reading, but I don't like memorizing things. Excluding things I was very interested in, my brain always forgot the last thing I read as soon as I started reading something new, which sucked. Oh yeah, that does suck. Thankfully, I don't. Sometimes I retain things that I really want to forget, like spoilers for shows and stuff, and yet my mind won't let me forget. And yet I can't remember things I did yesterday or something like that. Yeah, that's not cool. I slumped my shoulders sadly as I took the stack of documents that Fran had organized for me. After fifth bell rang, Fran returned to write names on the board. They were the names of the kids who had proactively worked hard and the names of those who had hid to avoid work. The pre-baptism children that you were especially worried about have been cleaned head to toe, Sister Mine. The soap and towels prepared beforehand were put to use as soon as it was warm enough outside. They are now wearing the second-hand clothes you bought and stuffing fresh hay into sheets. They were making their own mattresses out of cheap used sheets and the hay I had bought from a farmer. Are any of them sick or too weak to move? No, they are all quite fine. Entirely thanks to Gil bringing them food so consistently. The children now revere him as a savior, and likely you as well, since you told them he acted on your orders. Hearing that honestly made me kind of fuzzy on the inside. I was just happy that the kids were feeling better. A few of the shrine maidens and apprentices who were in the kid washing group made mattresses while the rest left to assist the other groups. That is all I have to report right now. I'll be getting back to my patrol now. Thank you, Fran. This is all going so well thanks to you. Fran gave a slight nod, then returned to the orphanage. A bit later, Lutz came back. Mind, the basement of the boys' building is all clean now, so we're going to start bringing in the workshop tools. Okay, thanks, Lutz. These people are crazy, you know. Cleaning is like breathing to them. Never seen anyone clean as fast as them. Lutz gave his report somewhat excitedly, then speedily walking back to his post. Almost immediately after Fran returned, wrote down the names he heard from Gil, then Power walked back outside. Everyone was so busy that I was stuck at my work desk that had arrived just a few days ago, staring at Fran's handwriting. The names of the gods were long, and there were a lot of them. I honestly wanted to suggest nicknames to the High Priest to make them easier to remember and more friendly sounding, like, what about Flu or Rain instead of Flu Train? He'd shoot me down in a second. Yeah, he would. They would call it blasphemy, essentially. The door to the kitchen was left open so Delia could glance inside while cleaning, which meant that eventually the smell of the reward soup cooking in the kitchen started wafting into my room. It seemed that the cleanup was finishing on pace while I thought about silly things. Sister Mine, the boys' building is all clean. Good work, Gil. That just leaves the girls' building, right? Yeah, the boys can't go into the girls' building other than the dining hall, so yeah. Maybe we should start preparing to distribute the soup to the dining hall. Gil nodded and left excitedly right as Lutz was walking inside. Hey, Mine, the workshop's all set up and ready, so I started steaming the potatoes. Is that all right? Why are you asking permission after starting? Oh, but well, Gil just went to get the dining hall ready, so now's as good a time as ever to start the potatoes. I giggled, but Lutz leaned in and lowered his voice. These people have never even seen potatoes. They've only ever seen food that's already cooked. They're all gathered around me when I started steaming them. It was a pain in the butt. That makes sense. They only eat divine gifts, so the orphanage doesn't cook meals itself. I guess it's reasonable that they'd never seen ingredients before. Speaking of which, back in my Irano days, I saw an article in a magazine saying that many kids couldn't recognize wild carrots. They only knew the cleaned ones with the leaves cut off. If that was the case in Japan, with the internet and such, it wasn't hard at all to imagine the priests here not knowing anything that they didn't directly encounter in their day-to-day lives. Alright, I gotta go teach them how to work the butter in. Lutz left again with butter knives and a grin on his face. This time, Fran entered after him. As expected, the basement of the girls' building, where the pre-baptism kids were, is proving difficult to clean. Currently, everyone assigned to cleaning the girls' building is working together to finish it. Go to the girls' building. I have decided to give the empty rooms to the pre-baptism children, with the understanding that this is consistent with their wishes. We are currently taking their clothes and hay-stuffed mattresses to the rooms. Fran's report made me sigh in relief. It was great that the kids would have decent places to sleep. Sister Mine, have you finished memorizing the greeting? Somewhat, but I'm not entirely confident in my memory. Can I bring this piece of paper with me? Certainly. With that done, I will call for you when everything is prepared. Delia, please get Sister Mine ready. Delia took Fran's place and started doing my hair. She set me in front of the mirror and pulled out my hair stick. As she held a brush in her hand, she looked at me through the mirror with a sad, pained expression. Did you save them? Right now, they're healthy enough to stuff straw into their own new mattresses. Ah. Despite my positive report, Delia's expression didn't brighten. She furrowed her brow and looked away as if she had just swallowed something bitter. Delia, you look down. What's wrong? Isn't this what you wanted? I'm happy but frustrated. Why couldn't you have saved me too when I was there? I wasn't even at the temple back then. That's kind of unreasonable. I understand that she wanted to be saved that way as well. I know, but Delia yelled out, knowing her frustration was unjustified but unable to do anything about it. Tears were on the verge of dripping out of her light blue eyes. It was clear just how much suffering she had gone through before her baptism, just how many times she had begged to be saved to no avail. It hurt my heart to see. I wasn't in time to save you, but if you're ever in trouble again, I'll be there. I'll save you next time, so please, don't cry. I'm not crying. Sorry. Don't apologize to your attendant. Delia aggressively rubbed her eyes while rejecting my apology. She was a proud girl and probably didn't want to admit to crying, but still. Delia sure is being unreasonable here, isn't she? What a cutie. My introduction as orphanage director was something of a special occasion, so I wore the special hair stick I had made for my baptism ceremony. It alone was enough to make even a commoner look like the daughter of a rich merchant at the very least. I've never seen a hairpin like this before. I made it for my baptism ceremony. The Gilberta Company has started selling them recently. You made it? Yourself? I had help, but I could make it on my own if I needed to. All I needed are materials. The materials? Neely looked at the ornament like a carnivore that had just found its prey as she brushed my hair before I put the hair stick in myself. She wasn't used to weaving hair around a hair stick yet, so there was no helping that. Sister mine, the preparations are ready. The fresh soup was split into several pots, which were put onto a cart. There are many great priests I had never seen before with Fran standing behind them. These are the priests that will help carry and distribute the soup. Thank you all, I appreciate the help. It is we who should be thanking you. They will surely be very grateful, as there have not been many divine gifts lately. Oh, but this soup is not a divine gift, it's a reward. A reward? The priest blinked, not really understanding what I meant, but I just responded with a smile. Fran carried me through a hall and eventually arrived in front of the orphanage. It was a surprisingly long walk since we had to loop around the building, while matching the slow pace of the cart. Fran set me down in front of the door and checked to make sure my hair and clothes were still neat. Once that was done, a gray priest opened the door and spoke loudly so that his voice echoed to all those within. With the divine protection of the mighty king and queen of the endless sky and the mighty eternal five who rule the mortal realm, the shrine maiden newly appointed as the orphanage director has arrived. The door opened straight into the orphanage's dining hall. It was a bit surprising to see rows of long tables right at the entrance, but given that divine gifts had to be delivered here daily, and that boys could only enter the dining hall, it was overall fairly efficient. Although the rows of gray robes had been sitting on the benches, they all stood up upon my arrival and faced my way. The sheer number of eyes on me and the people clearly sizing me up made me want to look at the floor, but before I could, let us welcome her with the prayers of the gods. Blessed be the gods. It was impossible for me to look away from the sudden sight of a masked group of people making that ridiculous praying pose. Sister mine, this way. Fran took my hand and guided me to a podium resting on a square of carpet. The older priests closer to the entrance were making sharp poses, but the smaller kids farther back were struggling to maintain their balance. It would be hard to say which of us were worse at it. As everyone's eyes returned to me after finishing their prayers, Fran set me on the podium and whispered in my ear, "Please give your speech like a noble, with dignity and authority." It seemed that leaving a strong first impression would be an important step toward getting the Grey Priest to obey me. Just like Gil said, the Grey Priests and Shrine Maidens here all knew I was a commoner despite being an apprentice Blue Shrine Maiden. If I showed a lack of confidence or authority here, they would look down on me in a snap. I needed to exude the confident majesty of a noble to keep my chin up and never lower my gaze. Keep smiling and maintain my composure. I just had to keep in mind what Benno had warned me about when we were going to give the donation. On our way here, Fran had said with a smile that if things got bad, I could just lightly crush them with my mano so that they would learn their place whether they liked it or not. I didn't exactly want to rule by fear, so ideally that wouldn't be necessary. I somehow managed to memorize the long greeting, but the only experience I had talking in front of large groups was when I won some award for an essay I wrote and had to give a humiliating acceptance speech. That and presenting my graduation thesis. I took a deep breath, trembling in fear from all the eyes on me, and touched the swaying flowers on my hair stick. I felt more confident with this hair stick on, since I had made it with my family. Greetings, everyone. I am mine, the one whom the High Priest selected to be the orphanage director on this vibrant summer day, blessed by the god of fire, Leidenschaft. From the bottom of my heart, I express my joy for your warm welcome and future service. The speech began with framing them as welcoming and serving me in a positive light, then ended with a prayer. I paused and took a breath so I wouldn't mess up the names of the gods. Oh god, here we go, guys. I'm probably going to mess it up. O mighty king and queen of the endless skies, O mighty eternal five who rule the immortal realm, O goddess of water, Flutrain, O god of water, Leidenschaft, O goddess of water, Shuzaria, there we go. O goddess of earth, Gadel? Whatever. O god of life, I don't know how to pronounce that one. I'm sorry. I can't even remember how they pronounced it in the anime. We offer you our prayers and gratitude. Fran had apparently written for me the standard greeting for formal affairs in the temple. The Great Priest responded immediately, "Blessed be the gods, glory be to the gods." Fran and the High Priest had forced me to practice praying at least once a day since I started coming to the temple, so naturally I had gotten more used to it. Nobody could call me a master at it, but I wasn't losing my balance or falling over anymore. Good. Honestly, I'm striking a pretty mean pose right now if I do say so myself. Once the greeting was over, it was time to distribute the rewards. Most of you worked together to clean the orphanage Harishig. I have brought a reward for those of you who did. Fran, please give the hard workers their rewards. As you wish, sister mine. Fran took out a wooden board and began listing off the names of those who didn't work. The gray priest distributing the soup skipped over those who had their names called, giving food only to the others. This looks like lunch is being handed out at school, I thought absentmindedly while watching, until suddenly a boy about the same age as Gil, who hadn't been given food, stood up and glared at me with his face bright red. This isn't fair. Divine gifts are supposed to be given out equally. You're a commoner and you don't even... Indeed, divine gifts are given equally. I smiled brightly at the boy who was acting entirely like Gil had at first. But these are not divine gifts. Did you not hear me when I said that these are rewards given to those who worked hard for my sake? Rewards are not equal. Unfortunately, those who do no work will not be rewarded. There's a saying that he who does not work shall not eat. You would all do well to remember this saying. The boy probably hadn't expected me to argue back. He looked at me stunned as if he had forgotten his anger entirely. A reward? Yes, a reward. Do your work next time. Also, I have brought further rewards for those who worked especially hard. Those who have their names called, please come to the front with your plates. Gray Priest opened the steamers that Lutz had put the buttered potatofuls in. The scent of butter drifted through the dining hall. As Fran listed off names, priests and shrine maidens timidly came to the front while glancing at those around them. A Gray Priest placed one buttered potatoful on each plate. I heard that you raced to where the children were and began cleaning before anyone else. Thank you. I was told you cleaned exceptionally fast. Lutz praised your work. You proactively carried the heaviest load yourself. Yes, fine work. I was just reading off the memo that Fran and Lutz had written about the hardest workers, but all of them looked at me with emotionally stricken expressions. Some of them even looked like Gil had, a sign that they had never been praised with even once before in their life. I couldn't help but realize just how blessed I was to have a family like mine. Visions of my family heaping praise on me for every little thing I managed to do ran through my head. I felt that from now on I would need to search for the good points in the priests and give them my praise as the orphanage director. Please continue your hard work, but for now, eat. The following day I held a cooking class. Groups were split into those washing vegetables, those cutting vegetables, and those lighting and maintaining the fires beneath the pots. Participants were being taught by Thule and Effa. Hugo, meanwhile, was working hard to make dinner by himself. Ella. Ella and Thule primarily taught how to cut the vegetables. Adults used large chopping knives while the kids held smaller multi-purpose knives. The fresh soup will be their reward and dinner, so everyone took their learning seriously. What? Okay. They were full of curiosity for the raw meat and vegetables that they had never seen before and awkwardly chopped them up with inexperienced movements. I observed that everyone made the first meal produced by the mine workshop. Fran told me that it would be fine to watch, but as a blue shrine maiden, helping at all was strictly forbidden. I felt eyes on my back and turned around to see the boy who had skipped out on work yesterday glancing my way while proactively chopping as many vegetables as he could. His intentions were so clear it was adorable, so I gave him extra reward fruit. Products. Work at the orphanage was progressing at a steady rate. They cooked soup several times after the cooking class and managed to work quicker as they got used to it. The size difference between chopped vegetables was diminished steadily. At times, there were some kids who tried to put weird ingredients into the wrong soups. But it was mainly just funny to see the other kids rushing to stop them. I got the feeling that everyone looked brighter than before, maybe due to finally getting enough to eat. Soon enough, it became a habit for them to do temple work in the morning and make soup in the afternoon. Dad and Thule coincidentally both had a day off on the same day, so I forced a meeting with Benna, who had just returned after being absent for a few days visiting another city, and asked permission to borrow Lutz. Mr. Benna, please lend Lutz to me all day today. Sure, but only if I get to have you all day the next day. Is it just me, or do you have an evil look in your eyes right now? Pretty sure that's just you. It's definitely not just me. I eyed Benna's poker face cautiously, but in any case, with Lutz down, I just had to get Thule and Dad on board. Dad, Thule, please. I want you to bring the orphanage kids to the forest. With you around, Dad, you should be able to get a bunch of kids to the guards. With you around, Dad, you should be able to get a bunch of kids the guards don't know through the gate, right? I don't mind, but I won't taking a bunch of orphans outside the city cause problems. I have the high priest's permission, so it'll be fine. Dad had looked doubtful that I had gotten permission to do this, but he agreed to help. Thule also agreed to help since she was going to the forest anyway. I'm okay with bringing them, but what do you want to make them do out there anyway? Lutz will be there to teach them how to make paper, but I want you to teach them how to gather in the forest while the paper's being made. They've never been to the forest before. Thule knew from teaching the orphans to cook that they had lived in an entirely different world from us. She frowned a bit, likely thinking back to how she had to teach them how to hold knives in the first place. Wouldn't it be better to bring more people to teach them, since none of them will have been to the forest before? You're right, but I'll be showing them how to make paper here. I only want to involve people close to me if possible. Okay, I'll help you, mine. Yay, thanks, Thule. And so I assembled the personages necessary to take a bunch of the orphans, mainly those apprentice age or younger, but not all, to the forest. There were only a few adult priests, and most of them wanted to go, but they would never need to stay at the temple this time. We had to go to the forest in the morning to have enough time to make the paper, and that would interfere with the adults' daily work. Everyone brought baskets, knives, billhooks for cutting wood, pots, and steamers. Les would teach them to gather vulrum wood, steam it, peel it off the bark, and to make paper just like we had done together before our baptism. As the wood steamed, Dad and Thule would teach them how to gather. But to help prevent information leaks, they would teach only the distinguishing features of the woods. Not the name, and for now we didn't mention the ash and toro parts of the process. That was mainly to minimize the chance of someone violating our magic contract by attempting to sell plant paper. Sister mine, I'm gonna go learn. I'm gonna pay attention. Yes, Gil, go learn to gather and make paper well. Gil went off to the forest with his eyes sparkling, but I was staying behind at the temple. I had to do paperwork for the high priest with Fran, get prayer lines beaten into my head, and suffer criticism for my prayer posture down to the movements of my fingers. The passing days seemed calm and peaceful on the outside, but there was a constant storm going on in my head. Or well, maybe it would be more accurate to say there was a burning chariot which I rode into the sunset as my pockets emptied. I had spent an exorbitant amount of money furnishing my room, the kitchen, and the orphanage. My money was draining and fast. Considering I might be forced to spend some unknown amount of money on noble obligations or some such thing, I wanted to fill my pockets again as soon as possible. I sold the idea for hangers earlier, and I should save cooking-related things for when the restaurant's open, so what should I do here? Maybe I should finally turn the things I talked to Les about earlier into products? Sister Mine, you seem to have something on your mind. Might I ask what it is? I was just thinking about money, really. We headed to the gate thinking it was about time for everyone to be getting back from the forest, and on the way we heard excited chattering from the other side of the gate. The kids came running into the temple with big smiles on their faces. Sister Mine, we're back! Welcome back! Did you gather a lot of things at the forest? We brought back lots of black bark. I brought the most. I see, very impressive. Now you just have to take the bark to the workshop to dry. If you would. Let's set up the black bark to dry in the mine workshop. Dad explained how to maintain a knife, and Dad and Thule taught them how to prepare and eat what they gathered in the forest. Now then, let us express our thanks for those who have taught you so much. I intended for them to just say thank you and leave it at this, but I forget we were in the temple. The orphans all yelled, "Praise be to our teachers," and genuflected, their heads pressed against the floor. Dad and Thule were both so shocked that they recoiled a bit. This is how people in the temple express their thanks, so it's kind of like saying they're as grateful to you as they are to the gods, which is, good. Yeah, I know, but dang, it threw me off. I explained to Dad and Thule what was going on in a quiet voice, then had the orphans who had finished genuflecting return to the orphanage. The priests who stayed behind made soup. Remember to wash your hands before you eat. Also, be absolutely certain to clean yourself before bed. You must have gotten very sweaty out there given the heat. After seeing the orphans off, I let out a heavy sigh. Sorry, everyone. Could you wait here for me? I'll go get changed. And I returned to my room with Fran and had Dealey and change my clothes. When I had plans to stop by Benno's store, I could preemptively wear my apprentice merchant outfit and leave after just taking off my robes, but today I had worn my normal clothes just like Thule, which meant I had to change my entire outfit. Sister mine, please get several more pairs of blue robes. Yours are all dusty since you've been to the basement. I want to wash them, which isn't easy when you don't have any spares, complained Delia. The temple's blue robes are made of high-quality cloth that felt smooth as silk. Buying spares would probably cost a hefty chunk of cash. I would need to think hard about making money. I'm back, sorry. I returned to the workshop after changing my clothes and locked the door. After giving Fran the key, I began the journey home with everyone. I will now report what mine did today. Fran, holding a board, reported to Les what I had done over the day and how healthy I seemed. He had to do that pretty much every day, but it was hard to open ink jars and use pens outside, so he wasn't able to write down everything he wanted, which made me suddenly remember something. Maybe it's finally time to make the notepad. I could expect for there to be enough demand to make them profitable since they weren't common, and plant paper was still expensive enough to drive up the price. It was possible that notepads were more common than I thought, but they would still be good gifts for people like Fran and Les. I started running through the steps in my head and figuring out what materials I needed. Then I suddenly realized that Dad had picked me up at some point, and we were already at the Central Plaza. Lutz! Still held up by Dad, I called it to Lutz, who was walking next to Thule. Does Mr. Benno know any metal workshops? Yeah, he does. What's up? Thought of something new? Uh-huh. Though I'll want to ask Ralph or Sieg to shape up some wooden planks for me. Not even Lutz, who was fairly dexterous with his fingers, could compare to the skills Ralph and Sieg had developed through training to be carpenters. I learned that well when they helped me make the hangar. Not to mention that, since I intended to give a finished notepad to Lutz as a gift, it would be better if he wasn't personally involved with making it. What? You're not going to ask me, your whole dad? You worked hard enough already today, Dad. Don't worry about this. I've still got some fight left in me today. Really? You're not going to drink and fall asleep? I pursed my lips and peered at my dad. After spending all day working outside and instructing a bunch of greenhorns, it was hard to imagine him doing anything but drinking and sleeping as soon as he could. It'll be fine. You always say that, Dad. You're definitely going to drink and fall asleep. Definitely. Thule said exactly what I was thinking. Unable to argue with Thule, Dad gave an exaggerated frown, his eyebrows digging into the bridge of his nose. If you promise you'll do it before you drink, I'll ask you instead, since it's a bit late to be going to Lutz's place. Alright, I promise. Sheesh, you two are starting to act more like F every day. And you think that's the cutest thing in the world, yeah? We've all heard this before, lots of times. Lutz shrugged as we all laughed. After having Dad measure Lutz's hand, we went home. Huh? So, what do you want me to make? Once home, Dad finished dinner while resisting the urge to drink. I started rummaging through our storage room for a suitable plank and tools. So, Dad, which would be easier, carving out a lot of space out of a plank to pour wax into, or hammering in thick blocks around a thin plank to create a spare space to pour wax into? Yeah, gotta be the second one. The wax won't flow out? Depends on how you do it, but it should be fine. With Dad's suggestion in mind, I peered through the basket packed full of planks and looked for one of a good size. Okay, I want you to use a plank about this thick to make 2 bores the size of my hand. 2 the size of Lutz's hand, and 2 the size of your hand. How deep? About as deep as my finger so the wax doesn't flow out. Oh, and we'll need holes to put string or rings through, so leave some space at the top. Basically, I want something like this. I explained while drawing a picture, and Dad nodded, rubbing his chin, then got to work. While Dad was busy, Thule and I bathed. The middle of summer was approaching, and even just doing paperwork was enough to get me sweaty, not to mention that Thule was covered in dirt from going to the forest. So mine, what are you having Dad make? I got into the washtub first while Thule washed my hair with handmade red sham. I answered while enjoying the bliss of my scalp being massaged. A notepad. A notepad? Isn't that what you call that bundle of failed paper you had? I would have liked to use good paper, but yes. I smiled and wiped my body down. Once that was done, we switched places and started washing Thule's hair. To be more accurate, I'm actually making what's called a diptych. But you can just think of it as a notepad that's harder to erase than a stone slate. Why did you ask if Benno knew any metal workshops? I want to order a stylus. The next day, I put the modified boards Dad had made me in my tote bag, had Lutz carry it for me, and went to the Gilberta Company with him just like I usually do. Since I had sold my soul to Benno for the day in return for borrowing Lutz, the timing couldn't have been better. Mr. Benno, please tell me what store sells wax, and introduce me to a metal workshop. What are you plotting this time? Do you really have to phrase it like that? I want to make a gift for Lutz and Fran, but I can't make it myself, so I want you to introduce me to workshops that can. The moment I said that, Lutz's eyes fell to my tote bag. He blinked in confusion after seeing the boards packed inside. A gift for me and Fran? What about Gil? I think stone slates would be better for Gil and Delia, since they don't know how to write yet. Lutz gave a disinterested but he was smiling a bit. In contrast, Benno's mouth was bent to a frown. Hey, mine, you don't have anything for me? If you see the finished products and want one, you can order better bases from carpenters. One carved by an amateur wouldn't suit you. Benno, as the owner of a large store surrounded by expensive things at all times, would undoubtedly stick out if he was using a credibly carved diptych. They were fine as gifts, but I wouldn't want to drag him down into the mud like that. Alright, you wanted a wax store and a smithy, right? Let's go. He took me to a store that sold wax, and I requested that they pour wax into the concave inside of the board I watched as they lined up the 6 boards my dad made and poured in the wax. It didn't even take a minute. Waiting for the wax to harden took a lot longer. This is a simple job for us, but an odd one. What will you be using these for? Diptychs. I talked to the older man behind the counter while waiting, but he couldn't really grasp what I wanted. Naturally, someone who didn't write much would find no need for a notepad. Which made me question whether diptychs would be a particular successful product. Well, looks like I might need to think of some other products. Once the wax hardened enough, we headed to the smithy. Witnessing Benno get what I wanted so easily reminded me of the importance of personal connections and wealth. This was a big step up from when I had just become mine. I had to rely entirely on trial and error. I'm Benno from the Gilberta Company. Is the foreman here? We headed to a smithy in the craftsman's alley, and Benno opened the door before calling out inside. A wave of heat hotter than the sun came flowing out of the open door. That was natural since any smithy would be using fire, but it was still hot enough to make me jump with surprise. I peered inside, my heart racing with thoughts of what might be inside, but it seemed that all the work was being done behind a tightly shut door that was radiating heat. Once the apprentice tending to the store disappeared into the back, the front area of the smithy had nothing but a counter for taking orders and a simple table with chairs. As I looked around the empty storefront, a massive man with arms thicker than my waist came out from the back, his great big bushy beard contrasting with the wispy strands of hair on his head. His large wide eyes were kind of scary. Hey Benno, what brings you here? More buttons for a noble? Yeah, not this time. This girl has an order for you. This little twerp? Ha, let's hear it. First I want circular rings to connect 2 boards like this. After I drew a picture of 2 boards being connected by rings and showed it to the foreman, he nodded. I also want styluses. You want what now? I erased the diptych drawing and drew the stylus I wanted. It was like a metal pen, but with a small pointed tip so as to dig letters into the wax, with the opposite tip flat to fill the letters back in. If possible, I also wanted a clip on it so it could be attached to the rings connected to the board. I would like 3 of these. The heck are these? They're pretty tiny. Hey, Johan, give these a shot. After staring at the stone slate for a bit, the foreman went to the back and called out for someone named... Oh, Johan! Johan! This is Johan, okay. Before long, a younger boy who couldn't be more than 20, his bright orange hair tied behind his head. This is Johan, my apprentice, but don't let that fool you. He's good with these kind of tiny things. Might as well be a master himself by now. I'm Johan, nice to meet you. What are you ordering today? I showed him the slate and gave him the same explanation I gave the foreman. Johan took out a board and started scratching on what looked like blueprints. His art was a lot neater than mine. Just what I would expect from a professional. Just how small do you want the tip to be exactly? About as thin as a sewing needle, and please make the tip sharp and pointed. But it would be hard to hold if it was all thin, so please make the part where you hold it be as thick as a normal pen. These aren't very precise directions. Johan set aside his pen with a sigh and went out back to retrieve several metal cylinders. He lined them up on the counter and asked me to try holding them. Which thickness is easiest for you to hold? This one for me. What about you, Lex? If we're talking about pens, this one would be easiest for me to write with. Lex and I had different hand sizes, so the thickness and weight of an ideal pen differed significantly. I looked at Benno. I want one for Fran too, so could you pick one? This one, and make 2 of them. I want one too. What? But a stylus on its own isn't good for anything. It needs a diptych to write on. I can make one of those later. Smithing takes time, so ordering it now will save time later. I nodded and asked Johan for 4. He nodded back at me and asked further questions. Can you describe the flat end more? What would you be using it for? How wide do you want it? What about the angle here? What exactly is a clip? You want to attach the thing to the rings, and the rings will have to be as thick as the clip. How long do you want them? His questions were so precise it caught me off guard, but with this level of detail, I was all but guaranteed a satisfactory result. That made me happy, so I answered each of his questions in turn. Meanwhile, Benno and the foreman discussed Johan nearby. He was a brainy kid with an obsession for details, and his work was always perfect, but at the cost of speed. Not to mention that a lot of customers got annoyed at his deluge of questions. I appreciated his attention to detail, but apparently not many people out there shared the sentiment. Johan would have an easier life if he learned to loosen up and compromise a bit, but his work's so good because he doesn't do that. I'm hoping to find a patron that can really make use of his talents. Any leads on that, Benno? Benno fell into thought, then glanced at me, but the foreman snorted, not the girl, though. She's too much of a twerp. You can't be a patron until you're an adult, and get enough money to support someone. You're not wrong. Benno cut the conversation short there, so I fell silent too. But I mean, I am the forewoman of my own workshop, and I do have some money I can use for myself. I like Johan's attention to detail, so if I also like the finished product, I'll always come here when I need metalwork done. Hey, mind, don't doze off. If you've done ordering, we're going to a carpenter. Benno picked me up and strode out of the smithy. It seemed that Benno was determined to have his own diptych made. Oh, God. Okay, I think that's going to be it. I'll see y'all next time.